Hey everyone. I've been watching the new season of Futurama. I love the show and I've always been a huge fan. I've been looking forward to it for a while now, and I'm super happy they got their original voice cast back for the return of the show. Before watching the first episode, I was excited to see some new Futurama. I was extremely curious what they would do after the end of the previous season. To me, the last season had wrapped the show in such a nice bow as it finished off, leaving everything in a perfect loop, and if you wanted to enjoy more Futurama and spend more time with the characters, you could go with Fry and Leela and do it all over again. With the show returning, it left them open to basically do anything they wanted with the show. I wondered about the possibilities and got excited to see what they did, and I hit play. I was met with the classic Futurama intro, but something was different. After the beam of light shoots to the top of the screen and fans out to reveal the title of the show, the words fade onto the screen to say Hulu-Rama, with the H and the L then flipping over to reveal Futurama. This didn't sit right with me. Futurama has been brought back multiple times now, and the original show studio never advertised their name in the intro of the show, let alone the title of the show. The show eventually got cancelled and picked up by Comedy Central to continue, and they didn't do that either. Whatever though, maybe it's just Hulu doing their annoying meta thing, and it's just a bad bit. Hopefully it's just a one-time thing. The show begins, and oh boy, I don't even know where to start exactly. I'll start somewhere positive. I was happy to hear the original voice cast, and there was a couple funny moments. The voices sounded older, which was a bit odd because it's weird to hear the professor and be like, whoa, the professor sounds older when he's already supposed to be centuries old. But I'm not going to blame the voice cast for getting older, and it's still cool to hear that they still had it after all these years and you forget about it after 5 minutes of watching the show. Billy West, the voice of basically 2/3 of the show, is 71 now, and he's still absolutely killing it at every voice he does. Now, sadly, it's on to the not so good part. The entire episode basically turns out to be a big advertisement for Hulu. Spoiler alert, the premise of the episode is Fry wants to binge every episode of All My Circuits, but there's too many episodes, so he has to get locked into this thing to be able to watch all the episodes in one sitting, and not have to waste any time going to the bathroom, eating, sleeping, all that human garbage. The professor is monitoring Fry and realizes if he ever stops watching All My Circuits, his brain will cease to function properly. So Leela goes to some in-universe Hulu called Fulu, where they make a bunch of fourth wall jokes about Hulu rebooting the series. Then they get to making episodes at hyper speed because Calculon is a universally renowned speed actor. Then they produce a bunch of episodes and the show eventually gets canceled because they all suck and they were rushed, but then they go back and try to get Fry out of his device safely. Just to realize that of course Fry had already just gotten out earlier because he is already so brain dead that of course he would be fine getting out of it. Classic. At the end of the episode there's a scene, and I'll play it here, but it just feels so extremely masturbatory and gross considering this whole episode is a meta commentary on Hulu rebooting this show and how you should like Hulu for doing so.
Don't reboot a show if the quality isn't gonna be there. Any TV show that truly cares about its audience, that loves and respects them must be canceled every few years. It's simply the right thing to do. Thank you.
This first episode left a bad taste in my mouth. I enjoyed the Futurama parts of it, but it didn't fully feel like Futurama. It felt like someone puppeting the corpse of the show I loved. But hey, gotta stay optimistic. Maybe this whole episode was supposed to be an ad since it's a fairly well-known series and could get their platform more attention. Not like Disney needs more money, but whatever. It just is what it is, and I'll wait another week for the next episode. A week later, the next episode rolls in. This one is not much better than the last. This episode felt extremely lazy. This episode had, do you remember, echoing in my head the entire time.
Oh, they're adorable.
Spoiler alert, this episode is a sequel to the episode where Leela impregnates Kif and they have kids. and they have to witness the birth of their grandkids. The story about having a connection to your kids, even if they aren't really yours with Amy, was cute, but it felt sort of cheap. We've basically seen this episode before when it originally happened, and that was basically the plot then as well. It just felt like an episode trying to capitalize on my nostalgia and emotions, and I don't know, it just didn't hit right. It's no Jurassic Park or Game of Thrones, and if you want a better episode than this, watch the original one. I also noticed with this episode, and after sitting with the first, that some of the characters don't act like themselves anymore. With this episode, it seemed that Leela is just as dumb as Fry is. She's always been smarter, but for some reason in this episode, there's a scene of her just strolling in, drinking the jelly out of a donut, which seemed off. And yeah, we got the Hulu Rama intro again, but you know, maybe they just forgot it in there. And now, we're on to episode 3. So, here we go again. Spoiler alert, this episode is all about crypto because that isn't already a dated thing to be talking about, especially in a show based in the year 3000. They even still refer to it as Bitcoin. This episode really frustrated me from the get-go. I already had a bad taste in my mouth from the second episode, but this one just immediately really let the flaws shine. For some reason, Dwight seems to not care for his dad at all.
I'm really looking forward to some quality father-son time. With who?
And recently, I watched the episode 300 Big Boys, where one of the very first things you hear from Dwight is him tell his dad that he wants to be just like him.
With a warning label this big, you know they gotta be fun.
But Pops, I don't want to have fun. I want to be like you.
Which is how I've always remembered Dwight being. Sure, he's still a kid and there's episodes where he disobeys or thinks his dad isn't the coolest, but even then, Dwight still looked up to his dad by the end of the episodes. It just seemed odd he didn't seem to care about his dad or what he thought at all. This episode also has weird character inclusions like the whale biologist from the episode I just mentioned, as well as the borax kid from the gender swap episode. It just felt like stuffing more member berries down my throat. Watching back some of the old episodes, there are a few recurring characters, but it was generally because the fans liked them, it was in a place that made sense, or they just needed more background characters. But even that didn't stop them from making new characters when it made sense. I just don't understand why Borax the Kid, of all people. Why the whale biologist? And yes, the Hulu Rama intro looks like it's here to stay. I just feel it's extremely disrespectful to the original creators of the show and the people who worked on it to make it Futurama, to slap your studio's name in the title of the intro as if it's your own creation. It was made over 20 years ago under a different studio that actually respected the product enough to not slap their name on the title. This season of Futurama, or era of Futurama, is going to be remembered as the Hulu Rama era. And that's exactly what Disney/Hulu wants, and it's gross. They want you to remember who made this show for you, and it's not even the actual creators, the writers, the actors, everyone. The show itself. It should be remembered for being Futurama because it is Futurama. This episode, I realized it was time to let go of ever seeing alien languages in the background. Not sure why, but with this one, it really hit me that all the background text we're going to see is squiggles in English. I think a lot of people don't realize the effort that went into Futurama before. Have you ever noticed the alien language? Like the note written for Leela when her parents left her on the surface. Did you know you can actually translate that? The people working on the show back then put the effort in to actually create an alien language. Scratch that. They made multiple because people figured them out too fast. With this episode, it really began to sink in that this is not the Futurama I was used to. And granted, it never would be. But creating a language for the show was an astronomical amount of effort for something most people are never going to look into. But the people working on the show cared about it that much. Hell, languages isn't even where it ends. Did you know the original Futurama had a mathematical theory invented for the body swapping episode? There was so much care and love put into the original. By the end of this episode, it really just hit me that this new iteration on the show is probably never going to have anything like that. The original writing staff for Futurama held 3 PhDs and 7 master's degrees. It is considered one of the most over-educated writing staffs on a cartoon ever. During Comedy Central's run, they cut a lot of that staff from the show, and the quality just barely managed to keep up. I think it's extremely difficult to really capture what made Futurama so good in the first place. The show is barely halfway through, but judging by the trailer and how it's gone so far, I'm not very hopeful, unfortunately. It looks like more member berries and old plot lines being refurbished for new and more general audiences are to come. I guess for the end of the video, I just wanted to leave you with what Fry says at the end of the first episode.
And what lesson, if any, did you learn? Well, first, I guess, don't reboot a show if the quality isn't gonna be there. Any TV show that truly cares about its audience, that loves and respects them must be canceled every few years. It's simply the right thing to do. Thank you.
Sobering thoughts from some drug-addled weirdo. Good night, God bless Earth, and Aru.